What's going on, everybody? This is Clint with the Die Hard MMA podcast. This podcast was filmed exclusively for odds.com. Be sure to click the link below. Check it out. We've got everything that you need over there. We've got you covered for every sport. Thank you so much for the support and good luck on all your action this week.
Excited to talk about this next fight, this heavyweight fight, by the way.
Here we go, James. Let's talk about it. We have got Aleksei Oleinik, the boa constrictor. I think he's the oldest fighter on the roster at this point.
He's 43, I think, right?
43 years old and still doing it. He's knocking on the door of 70 professional fights, man. No, he's not knocking on the door. I'm sorry. He's got 74. 74.
Yeah, he's knocked down the door. He's knocked down the door.
He kicked it in. Taking on Chris Daukaus. Holy crap. I'm going to let you lead this one off, James. Talk to me about these guys.
Well, first, I got to say, Oleinik might be one of my favorite interviews. So every time I try and book an interview with him, he sends me, like, rather than like text me back, he'll like send me a video, or like, for example, be like, hey, just a reminder about the interview. And he'll literally just send me a video going like 4 seconds. So he's
his own
a different
thumbs up
guy.
emoji.
Yeah, I honestly, I think he's hilarious and good to see. You know, he's still got a sense of humor here. But this is just like the fight we broke down before between Arlovsky and Aspinall. It's an up and comer in Chris Daukaus taking on a veteran in Aleksei Oleinik. So right now, in terms of the odds, as you would expect, Chris Daukaus the favorite at -170, Oleinik at +150. Now the difference between Daukaus and Aspinall, in my opinion, anyways, is that Daukaus has actually fought some pretty good competition leading into the UFC. I know it's heavyweight, but if you look at like Ring of Combat here, you know, some decent, they usually match up pretty well in terms of some of the competition here. He did lose to Zhu back in 2019, but in general, you know, you're seeing some guys that are, you know, decent on there. Actually, kind of now that I'm saying that, I'm looking at, because I just figured because he fought for Ring of Combat, he's pretty good, but now I'm actually looking at some of these records. I take that back. My apologies there. That's why I got to double check these things sometimes. But you get what I'm saying here is that I think Daukaus at least has a little bit more experience, is a little bit, you know, he's fighting for Ring of Combat, which is one of the better promotions out there in terms of what we've seen here. So, yeah, we know the story with Oleinik. Obviously, he gets you to the ground. He's going to get you in a lot of trouble. That Derek Lewis fight, he was close to, it looked like getting the win over Lewis in that first round. Lewis was on his back in that one, and it wasn't until the second round where Lewis kind of, you know, kept it standing, was able to knock him out, right? So Oleinik's a guy that can still be dangerous. Does have a win over Verdum, you know, 2 fights ago, had the submission win over Mo Green. Daukaus has been submitted before. You have to go all the way back to 2015. Sean Teed actually submitted him in the very second round, so that is a little bit of a concern here in terms of if he can get it to the ground. But that's kind of how I see this fight. By the way, tail of the tape here, 31 years old for Chris Daukaus, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. Oleinik, 43 years old, 6'2" with an 80-inch reach. So it's going to be Oleinik who has a reach advantage, and it's going to be Daukaus who's got like a slight height advantage. But either way, they're going to be kind of similar in that regard in terms of physically. But Daukaus, you see him, he's a fast guy. He likes to go out there. He knows he's not getting paid by the hour, right? Quick win over Parker Porter, over Nascimento in his last fight. Again, I think these are better competitors than what Aspinall has faced so far in his UFC career so far in terms of the competition here. So kind of like the last fight, the Aspinall and Arlovsky fight, like I would almost do a scenario of like Oleinik by submission prop with like Daukaus by you know, knockout prop, because Oleinik has been knocked out. But the thing is, like, you got to get him there. You got to keep it on the feet. You got to make sure you don't get taken down. And we have seen that happen a couple times. I mean, as much as I like Chris Daukaus, you look at who Oleinik's been knocked out in the last couple fights: Lewis, Harris, and Overeem. These are mainstay knockout artists in the UFC's heavyweight division. Daukaus may be there, but I don't know yet. We don't have enough evidence of him in the octagon to do that. So I'm just going to quickly look at these props here and just see if there is any sort of value there. So Oleinik by submission, we don't have that prop out yet. I'm guessing it would be, I don't know if it would be plus money, but it might be kind of close. He is the underdog, actually, so I guess it would be plus money.
Inside the distance is plus 195. So you got to think.
So you got to think there. I mean, I don't see Oleinik, you know, necessarily knocking out Chris Daukaus, although it is heavyweight, could happen here. But Daukaus wins inside the distance is -145. You know, you might as well just take him straight up. You're not getting tremendous stuff. Exactly. So I just want to warn people, though, and I have an article on odds.com coming up here. It should be up here soon. I just wrote it today, but I do think the value on this fight leans more towards us on the Oleinik side because of the experience, because of the fact this guy is pretty tough to put out. If you look at some of the knockout losses, like I've mentioned there, against guys that are sort of mainstays as knockout artists. I don't know if Daukaus is in that class yet. We have yet to see that, but I think this could be a situation again where we could see someone rushed a bit too soon. Like if you told me that both of these heavyweight prospects lose their fight on Saturday, I wouldn't be shocked, because I just think the experience gap is huge. But at the same time, could it be a case of this is the future of the heavyweight division where we have these two guys that have really, come up very quickly? Because that's the thing. If either of these two guys win, Aspinall and Daukaus, they're going to continue to propel up that division. And I know it's a bit of a mess at the top, but the UFC is going to push them hard. So kind of what I'm saying here is I'm going to pick Daukaus, but if you're going to bet this fight, I really feel like the value here is more on Oleinik, or you could do that sort of prop thing like I mentioned where, maybe just take Daukaus straight up and then hedge it with Oleinik by submission. So that's where I'm going there. Am I wrong here, Clint? How do you see this fight?
This is one where there's a couple of key differences here for me between this one and the last one that we talked about, and I'll get into that. So first and foremost, there's two old scrappy underdogs that I just can't stop trying to put my money on: Glover Teixeira and Aleksei Oleinik. These guys are just hanging in there. They are the exceptions to the 40-year-old rule. They just keep on performing at a high level, and they refuse to die. Aleksei Oleinik has the nastiest squeeze I've ever seen. This guy's jiu-jitsu is on another level. And even at 43, he just manages to get his arms around people's necks and choke them out. The problem with Aleksei Oleinik, he's got about 6 minutes of gas. He comes out like a bull in a china shop for that first round. And if you survive round one with him, he's got next to nothing in round two. The only reason he went to a decision with Fabricio Verdum is both those are old men that decided they wanted to strike because neither of them wanted anything to do with the other's ground game. It ended up being kind of a sloppy, exciting, really fun to watch slugfest between two big past their prime heavyweights.
Yeah, he dominated Verdum though in that fight. That was I couldn't believe that fight, and then of course Verdum beat Gustafsson in the fight after. And you're like, what the heck happened in the fight before? But yeah, that was a weird win for Oleinik in the sense that I think like you said, it was going to be more of a jiu-jitsu fight. But Oleinik's stand up, I mean, he boxed for Fabricio Verdum, was pretty impressive. Anyways, just want to point that out.
So there were some circumstances. That was one of Verdum's worst performances ever. That was during COVID. He didn't have a camp. He was training in his backyard, unless I'm recalling this incorrectly. And he fixed everything for his next fight. And that's where we actually got on him in his next fight and cashed a nice ticket with him coming off that just awful performance. But that was not the Fabricio Verdum that we're used to seeing. And I think that made a huge difference in that fight. But Aleksei Oleinik, he uses his club and sub style striking to just close the distance, get his hands on his opponent, and then drag them to the mat. So that's something that really kind of scares me here because we're in the small cage. Chris Daukaus, he is a fast heavyweight. He is light on his feet. He's got lightning fast hands, and he hits like a ton of bricks. Just excellent striking precision power from Chris Daukaus. I love this guy. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and that's something in his favor here, that if it does end up getting into a ground exchange, he's going to have better defense than a lot of people that have dealt with Aleksei Oleinik on the floor. Derek Lewis, Maurice Green, Walt Harris, none of those guys, even Mark Hunt, Junior Albini, you go to the guys that he's been choking out with the Ezekiel chokes. Daukaus isn't going to let that happen. Daukaus knows better than to let the Ezekiel choke happen. So this is the issue that I've got. Aleksei Oleinik has no gas and no chin. So he's going to come out like a bat out of hell in round one and try and get this thing to the floor. Can he sub Chris Daukaus? Yes. Yes, he can. He can sub anybody. But the longer this guy manages to stick around and fight, the worse it gets, in my opinion, because he's coming off another bad knockout loss. And we talked about guys not being able to bounce back from those knockout losses. At 36, this guy's 43. Those durability issues are just going to get worse and worse and worse. And Daukaus, in my opinion, is the legit prospect of the two that we've talked about. I believe more in Daukaus than I do in Aspinall at this point because he's shown skills, whereas Aspinall has shown me power. Aspinall is scary. Aspinall can hit anybody and take them out in the first round. That's fine. But Daukaus is quick. He's light. He's lightning fast for a big man, and he's a Cain Velasquez style heavyweight where he comes in about 230 pounds. He doesn't come in at 265. He's not looking to outpower you. He's looking to out-finesse you, and he lets the knockout come to him. It's something I really like to see. I think this fight is going to end up in a scramble and end up on the ground. But Chris Daukaus has good wrestling and good jiu-jitsu. I think he's going to be in the top position, and his ground and pound is nasty. I think the 4-inch reach advantage for Daukaus, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt will allow him to stay safe. The fast hands are going to be a problem, and I do think he's going to knock out Aleksei Oleinik on Saturday. I'm in the Daukaus side of things, and I love to see that the money is coming in here on Aleksei Oleinik because it's driving that price down for me. If I can get Chris Daukaus down to minus 145, minus 150, somewhere in that range. When he opened up as, minus 210, I would love to lay the wood on this guy straight, not have to worry about a prop, not have to worry about parlaying him. Just take Chris Daukaus straight at minus 140. That would be a slam dunk bet for me, in my opinion. It's scary. It's dangerous because Oleinik can submit anybody at any point in time. But I think Chris Daukaus is legit. And on top of that, if you've noticed, he's been taking his strength and conditioning super seriously the last couple of fights. If you rewind 3 fights ago when he fought Parker Porter, he was impressive in that fight. But boy, was he a big flabby man. This is a guy who did not take care of himself, and he moonlighted as a fighter on the weekends until he finally made it. Now he's taking training seriously. You go to his Instagram, and it's a bunch of gym photos. You look at his body, he's completely changed up how it looks. You can see the muscles. You can see the definition. And he's going to get bigger and stronger every single time he gets into the cage. So I think that him taking his training like a professional for the first time in his career is going to make the difference here. And I think his speed is just going to be too much because, yes, Aleksei has good boxing. Yes, Aleksei has good power, but he's lost that speed, and speed kills at heavyweight.
Certainly does. I forgot to point out, I did interview, well, I mentioned Oleinik, but I also interviewed Daukaus as well ahead of this fight. And I do remember him mentioning that. Yeah, you're right about him really trying to improve his conditioning and all that. So that could be another factor. You know what I might even look at now that you bring it up? They don't have it out yet, but Daukaus in round 2 might be worth a stab just because, like you said, Oleinik very dangerous in that first round. Maybe Daukaus needs to figure out his timing a little bit. I don't know. Maybe avoid sort of the onslaught, kind of like the Derek Lewis fight, right? Where, Lewis, Oleinik came out of bat at a hell against Lewis in that first round. Second round, Lewis was able to capitalize. Maybe the same thing here. But yeah, that's something to think about.
I don't mind that look at all. Daukaus round 2 looks like the first book that's got it out. Bet Online has it at plus 550.
Oh, I saw. I think it was plus 650. Let me double check that. Round 2.
It's showing 5 for me right now.
I'm seeing 6. Weird. Maybe I got to refresh it. Let me see here. But
someone already hit it, James.
Yeah, as we're talking. But either way, yeah, I think a Daukaus finish is probably the most likely thing, right? I mean, it's heavyweight. It's kind of an obvious thing to say.
Exactly. It's heavyweight. I think Daukaus finish is the way to go. I think he's going to have what it takes to get it done here, and I think he's going to have what it takes to survive. I also don't know that. I don't know that Oleinik is even going to get the opportunity for the submission. I think that Daukaus will be able to use his reach advantage and the hand speed to keep him away. Because like I said, Oleinik has got to club and sub people. He's not a takedown artist. He's not a young man. He doesn't shoot in on the hips. He relies on getting people's back against the fence and then either pulling guard or mauling them to the floor. And if he can't close that distance on Daukaus, and if he's eating those sharp, precise punches while he closes that distance, I think he's just going to go down like a sack of potatoes. I mean, the other thing we could do is the under 1.5. Now, those of you who may know, I do a show for odds.com that's going to come out later this week called Total Madness. We go back over the card, overs, unders, things like that. So I'm giving away a little bit of the goods that are going to come out on my show later this week. But under 1.5 at minus 150 for these guys seems like the way to go, doesn't it? I mean, you've got 2 minutes and 30 seconds of round 2 that if somehow they manage to survive out of round 1, you've still got some of that in your back pocket for them to get it done. Either Oleinik drags this thing to the floor and chokes this guy out, or Chris Daukaus is going to knock him out. And I really don't see it going any other way. I don't see how Oleinik survives the boxing exchanges to get this thing to a decision, and I don't see how Daukaus survives on the ground to get this thing to a decision either. I think the under 1.5 might be the way to go.
Great play. Definitely dig that for sure.